The Portland Trailblazers got a big win over the Phoenix Suns thanks to DominAyton and some late game heroics from Anthony Simons. Let's celebrate the positives here on the Blazer Focus podcast. I'm Aaron Fentress of the Oregonian, joined as always by Craig Birnbach. Craig, man, Blazers ended a 7-game losing streak with a big win over the Suns. I say big in terms of that. It was just big because they got a win, not because it falls to them in the standings or anything like that. And they got Washington Thursday night, a 4-22 team, a team that the Blazers should win. They could win 2 in a row, Craig. That would be amazing. That's only happened twice this year for this team. Anyway, how you been, man? You been watching these games and enjoying that, at least enjoying the entertaining endings?
Yeah, and I will say they're all big wins. But they were down 22. They were down 22. And it was not looking good. And I give Chauncey Billups and all the young guys and the old guys who are, 28, credit. They did not pack it in. Down 22 to the Suns, you're staring at Kevin Durant, you're staring at Chris Paul, you're staring at Devin Booker. That's not a lead they give up against really good teams. Now, they're struggling. They're struggling, the Suns, right now. Can't get their big three on the court. But still, I mean, to come back from 22, and then they took control in the fourth, at the end of the fourth quarter. It got a little, tight. But, they built themselves the lead where they were the team that the Suns had to try to catch up with. So I was impressed with it. And when you look at the stats for that game, like everyone's talking about DominAyton, and he came through. And he had a big double-double. But he shot 6 for 18. It wasn't a great game. I mean, like a guy that tall shoots 6 for 18, it's usually a horrible night. Because you win and he made clutch plays when it mattered. It's a very positive thing. I loved Kamara's defense. I'm gonna be on the Kamara train. I gotta bring it up. Yeah, he's rolling his eyes, but you gotta love it.
It's okay. I got Ant, you got Kamara. That's fine.
And the weird thing about the Ant thing was everyone's like, not everyone, but you go on social media, you got to do it. And it's like, he's a closer. I'm like, we already saw that. Like, that already happened.
I know.
Like, it happened. Like, we know he can close. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you just found Anthony Simons. Have you not follow Aaron Fentress on Twitter? Like, come on. But yeah,
I wrote an article about Ant. I put in there, let's not pretend this was the first time he's done this. Like I mentioned a couple of key moments. Yeah, he's demonstrated he can close before. That wasn't a new thing at all.
You know why he hadn't been closing? Because they haven't been winning.
He missed 18 games, and they haven't had very many opportunities to close.
And he's not shooting great yet. But I just, it's shot.
No,
that's how you believe in a guy's shot. Is when you're just shocked when he keeps missing, and that's how I am with him. I just am surprised. It still looks good. But yeah, I mean, that win to me, like we said, jokingly, all wins are big just because they need them. But, I felt it was nice to see the young guys. I love seeing Scoot's aggressiveness as far as being excited about winning. You can just see how much he enjoys winning. And that to me is, more important sometimes than he did not have a great game, but you could see how pumped he was that they won. And to me, that's a good sign.
Agreed. And this team has shown fight all year. I mean, they usually don't go away, and this time they didn't go away, and it worked out. And it was funny because they just flipped things around. Like I said, they were down 22 in the first half. They came back, pissed off the Suns. Suns went on another run. We're up 61-49 at half. And then the Blazers came back, tied it, and then pulled away. Like, it was crazy.
Yes.
Like, you saw them get on. I think they got by 10 at some point, right? It was just not. And the biggest thing was the turnovers. They had 13 in the first half. In the second half, they only had 4. And so if you're not turning over the ball, the other team's not getting all these easy transition points. You're able to set your defense. And they did a pretty good job of just shutting down everyone else. Like, Booker and Ayton did their thing, and they shot phenomenally well. They combined for 68 points, but no one else really did that much damage or consistently, especially in the second half. So, it was a very nice. It was nice to see them be rewarded for working hard and showing resiliency, which they do most nights, even when they're overmatched. And, when you get in tight games like that, to see some of the young players make plays and do things to help the team win, it's always good for a developing crew, no doubt about that. But let's dive more into DominAyton. So we haven't seen DominAyton in a while. Like after games, his locker is cleared out and he's gone.
Wow.
And there was that moment against Dallas where Chauncey Billups called a timeout 18 seconds into the third quarter because
he was not happy.
Ayton didn't execute. Right, Ayton didn't execute. And he'd been struggling, and the team had been struggling, Ayton been disappearing, but they brought him out to the podium after the Suns game for obvious reasons. And he still, expressed positivity that, it's all part of the process and he's having fun learning and the team learning each other and growing. And he doesn't seem to be overly impacted by the winning. But, you brought this up during the last podcast. At some point, you got to see more. I've been giving him the benefit of the doubt. But it's funny that he comes out in this game against the Suns and he's overly aggressive where he hasn't been in the past. And he says it had nothing to do with the Suns. Ant and Grant weren't buying that. And Grant, I told Ant that said that he looked at me like, he said that? Well, he just may not know it. And then Grant later smiled and was like, yeah, clearly he cared about who he was playing against. But then I asked Grant, I'm like, okay, so how can you guys get him to be this way all the time? And he said, it's something we have to work on. We have to get him to be aggressive more often because it just changes us. And it does. And even if he goes 6 for 18, which isn't good, if he's being aggressive, it just helps in other areas. So, you've been wanting to see more from him. You saw a glimpse of it in this game. Did it impress you or did it make you think, okay, where's that every night?
Well, it's what scares you. I mean, remember the first time they played the Suns, Devin Booker, when they beat him, he said, well, I'm happy for him. I'd like to see him, even now that he's not his teammate. He said, I'd like to see that every night. And to me, that's a sign that they know that players that have played with him get frustrated by his inconsistent effort or aggressiveness. So I just keep saying, like, this year, it's hard to say this year doesn't matter when you're watching it and it matters at the time, right? So I think what matters is what are they going to be able to communicate with him front office wise, coaching staff wise, where they're getting what they expect from him and what they want. And when Billups called that timeout, that was the first sign where oh no, they're not completely happy. They've been saying all the right things. We're not getting him the ball. He's doing what we're asking. But no, that moment was no. Nobody calls a timeout that fast. You can't call a timeout faster. You gave up one bucket and you called a timeout. And I give him credit. Billups didn't yet. He just stormed off. It was I need a timeout for myself because I'm gonna react.
He got on for a second and then he walked away. He went right up to him.
But I mean, right. But he's like, nope, this is not the right place. So I'm concerned about Ayton for the same reason everybody should be concerned about Ayton. That's the big thing you got when you decided to move on from the Lillard era. And if he doesn't work out, you're missing a huge piece that you're paying a lot of money and you gave up capital for. So I'd like to see him I don't want to see him go 6 for 18, right? I want him to go 12 for 18. I mean, he shoots 60%, right? So in a normal game, when he takes 18 shots, I expect him to have 30 points. So that's what I want to see. But we know if he cares, that's the part that's hard. Because players, his teammates, and his coaches challenge him to stay connected and to play aggressive.
Right.
And he's not 19 anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's what you say and we'll talk a little bit about Scoot. That's what, you say to the guy who's first year in the league or second year in the league, not the guy that was drafted 1 overall and is on his second team. You expect him at this point to just go ahead and do it. But I understand why the motivation might be hard for him to find after playing with a contender for so long and with vets to have to come over here And suddenly he's got to learn that he's that guy now, right? He's the guy that needs to be aggressive every night. So he's showing the way for Scoot and Sharp and Kamara, who doesn't need that because he plays hard every night, So I'd like to see that shift where he's a little bit more vocal and every night he's given effort, because they can control a little bit of where he is mentally and as far as not winning all the time by playing him less. You know what I mean? Like, I'd rather see 24 minutes of Ayton kind of going off, being very aggressive, than 40 minutes of 10 and 12, 10 points, 12 rebounds. Does that make sense?
No, I hear you. And what Billups said, though, was that he thought maybe if he played him more and got him going early, he'd get more aggression out of him. And he did, but he did against the Suns. Right. And so that's where it's just like, I got to see it. Like, I got to see it tonight. Come out against the Wizards that have one of the worst defenses in the NBA and gives up the second most paint points and score 25. Dominate them. Dominating them. If you go out there on your 16 and 12, it's like, okay, great. Nurkic could do that.
He did.
And I did a tale of two centers the other day. I compared their stats, and
very similar.
Right now they're at best neck and neck. There are certain areas where Nurkic is just better, but I think he fits what the Suns want better than Ayton, Ayton not giving you 100%. Whereas I think the Blazers ultimately with a faster, more athletic center are going to be better than having Nurkic, but you need Ayton to elevate his game. And we'll be talking about this for a couple of years probably, because it looks like it's
right, because we hope it's still at least
they're not going to be able to trade him. They're not going to be able to trade him.
Yeah,
he's going to be making $34 million a year unless you can get someone that just who wants to dump some other contracts. But yeah, so okay. In conclusion, he gave you a glimpse. He didn't shoot well, which is going to happen, but he gave you a glimpse of what it can be like when he's aggressive and how it helps the team. So maybe they can start getting that out of him. But he has to want it, man. Right? Yeah. He has to want it. He has to have that passion, desire to go out there. And that's the same thing people were talking about with Zion. It's like, do you want to be great or not? Yeah, we see you go 11 for 11 and 16 for 17 some nights, and then other nights you get 12 points. And it's like, what are you doing? Same thing with Ayton. Does Ayton not have the desire? Not everyone does. And we'll see if Ayton can figure it out. All right. Let's move on to something that happened in the Golden State game. So at the end of the game, Curry misses a free throw that would have put him up 3. Ayton gets the rebound, immediately outlets it to Sharp. Billups doesn't call timeout. Sharp goes down the court, and instead of just pulling up for a nice little short jump shot, he runs over, Brandon something, charging foul. I can't remember his name. Game over.
Rookie.
So Billups said after the game that it was a good situation to allow Sharp to try and figure it out. And Sharp made the wrong play. The value in that is that, as we've talked about, wins don't matter, and maybe Sharp learned a lesson that can help him in the future. And with Sharp being out, Billups kind of alluded to the fact that this, that's bad because Sharp's not going to play at least tonight because of the adductor situation. Then Scoot maybe gets more minutes late, and you give him some of those late game pressure minutes. How valuable do you think that is, as opposed to trying to drop the perfect play for Ant, which they did do when they had a natural game stoppage against the Suns. But do you see value in just sort of letting those guys live and die in the moment?
First of all, I have zero problems with him not calling a timeout when he sees Sharp take the rebound and go. I mean, Sharp, look, Podziemski, the rookie, great play. A great play. And it is so hard to draw a charge like that.
Right.
And I mean, if he moves 1 inch back, he's in the circle, and the Blazers have the lead. And who cares? Like, that game's not going to matter at the end, right? So let Sharp go for it. And again, it's all about, to me, aggressiveness. I'm super glad that that's what Sharp wanted to do. Like, he didn't look for a timeout. He's like, I'm going to win the game. And eventually, we want him to be a killer. Michael Jordan and Kobe, the best closers in the world, we all know they shot less than 50% on, game-winning shots. But they don't care because they wanted to win. Damian Lillard the percentage of his game winners compared to misses, again, under 50%. But the ones he makes, you remember forever. It's just the way it is. And that's what I want. I wanted Sharp to say, I'm going to go win the game. It took a perfect play by a rookie to stop him. So I have zero. I don't even know why it's a conversation in my mind. Like, because it was a good shot. Like, in the sense that he was almost at the rim and the guy had to make a perfect play to stop him. So, and yes, will he learn from that? Maybe, but I kind of hope he doesn't. I kind of hope he says,
"Well, no, but it wasn't a good shot. He was out of control.
No, but he was that guy. Yeah, oh, right. But at the same time, like he went to a sharp, strong move to the basket is a good shot in my mind. No, in that instance, that guy got good position, got in front of him, got the charge. But Sharp's gonna, if he gets to the rim and does that again, and Euro steps and gets around him. I'm just saying, like,
pulls
up and hits
pulls up
11-footer, right?
Yes,
yeah,
right.
Or someone runs with him. Like next time, Scoot's with him, right? And he gives it up for someone layup, or maybe Ayton runs with him, or he turns and finds a guy wide open in the corner for the three. I don't care that it didn't work out, because it took a perfect play on defense to stop him, because if that guy's moving, he's going to the line. And all I care about is that I can win the game. That's what he said. I can win the game. I'm our best chance. And in a year where you're going to go to, lose probably 60% of your games, like that's the way I want to lose. I want to lose with my young guy saying, I know I can win this game. So I hope he learned what
the best he could do was tie. They were down 2, so the best he could do was tie.
It could have been an M1. Could have been an
M1. Okay, it could have been an M1.
You're right.
No, I don't disagree.
Yeah.
I don't disagree. He had to learn that lesson.
I'm just saying, like, I was totally thrilled with it, and they went to replay, and I was like, oh darn, that's a good play. That's a charge. Because in real speed, you're like, oh, there's no way, and you're like, oh yeah, I guess so. You got it. Good job, rookie. Like, well done. I've got I want Scoot to take final shots. I want Sharp to take final shots. I do not, want Brogdon taking final shots. Like, I don't think he's going to be around when it matters, right? So let me see these guys become killers, because we keep talking about it. We need that. The Blazers need them to hit. They need them to be stars, and that's what stars do.
I don't have a problem in that situation. Sharp, his athleticism, speed, transition with Curry, on his left, on his right, no rim protector, go make a play. Like, to me, you're probably not going to get a better opportunity than that if you run a play with 5 seconds and then bounce it, right? And Sharp learned the lesson. And I hope, I assume they showed him the film and they're like, dude, you could have done all these other things. And maybe he goes and he works on those things, because we know he loves to go to the basket, right? He's not afraid of anything. He's trying to dunk on everybody. You could put Shaq, Wilt, and Kareem down there, and he's going to try and dunk on all 3 of them. But he needs to learn to do other things, not just always go to the basket. And hopefully this was a good lesson for him in that regard. That said, like, if they do call a timeout, I'm not running a play for Sharp. I'm running a play for Ant, like they did against the Suns, right? I'm still running a play for my best players. And, you just said, I want to see Scoot, getting the last. I don't want, Scoot hasn't earned that. To me, Scoot has to prove he can make basic shots before I'm going to drop a play for him to maybe be in there for a game winner. Like, I think there has to be levels to these things. But, he probably does need some more late game minutes, like Chauncey alluded to, and maybe with no Sharp, he can get more of that. But at the same time, to me, if you create a situation where you're setting up someone to fail just for the hell of it, which I think Scoot will more likely fail, then I don't think that's good for anybody. I think you just irritate your vets. I mean, Grant and Simons are going to be like, you should be drawing that up for us, not for this guy that shoots 30%. So mixed bag there for me. But at the end of the day, like you said, the goal is to develop. I think there's a right way to do it without overdoing it. And I think letting Sharp take that moment was overall good for him and, his growth, because he learned a valuable lesson.
So you're like, in a way, we agree, but you're talking about 2 different things. You're talking about like what Billups should do in the huddle and what Sharp and, in my opinion, like Sharp and Scoot, what I want them to believe. See what I'm saying? Like if I'm Chauncey, of course I want Simons or Grant taking the shot at the end of the game, and of course and that's how I draw it up. But what I want as like a franchise is I want Scoot and Sharp to be like, I'll make the final shot. Like I believe in myself. And they didn't go against it, right? Sharp just went. If Chauncey wanted a timeout, he could have called one. And he did instinct basketball. So I just want their instincts. I don't want Chauncey to draw up a shot for Scoot to hit a 3 at the end when Simons is in the lineup. I'm not crazy. But what I want is Scoot in the back of his mind saying, I can make that shot. Like, I don't care if I'm shooting 27%. I'm going to make that shot. I'm the best player on the court, and not in a cocky way. I guess in a cocky way. I just know that
you gotta be cocky.
Yes. Stars, if you want them to be all-stars, they need to believe in themselves wholeheartedly. They want to fight for that final shot, and they need to be willing to fail and not care because they have such a belief that they're going to make it, and they're going to make the next one even if they miss them. And there aren't going to be a ton of opportunities like that. So I'm hoping, again, I think that if Scoot got a rebound with 8 seconds left, as fast as he is, if he took off for the rim, I'd be fine with it, right? Like, he's 19. Like, if he gets a charge, like you said, he'll learn, like, oh, these guys in the NBA, they actually could get in front of me rather than in AAU when they couldn't. And also, the refs in AAU were not going to call an offensive foul on me, and there was no replay. So I was good. So that's all I'm saying. I don't want Chauncey. I don't want you to think I think that Chauncey should be like, sit down, Simons. We're down 1, but we're gonna design a shot to get Scoot wide open for 3 from the top of the key. That's not my thought.
So speaking of Scoot, he has been playing better. That has to be acknowledged. He's up to 37%, 23% on threes, and we all know that that's, at one point that was under 30% and at like 10% on threes. So he's getting better, getting more confident, and he's taking it upon himself to be more aggressive, which you have noticed and been appreciative of.
Well, I loved hearing that Chauncey said, I just went to him and said, hey, man, like, you're a ridiculous athlete, and we're not seeing that. And we should see that every night. Like, you've been fast, but you haven't been, like, crazy athletic. And he challenged him to we should see that every night. And now we've seen dunks, and we've seen him go hard to the rim. And, we were joking while we were warming up. I'm like, he wasn't great against the Suns, and he went to the rim a few times. And the Shaq of Troutdale rejected him a few times, like he was an eighth grader and he was a senior. But I just cared that he went hard. And I was thinking, we had been talking about it, I think, thinking the same thing as Billups. Like, the reason why he was drafted 3rd overall was not because he could shoot. Everyone knew that was a challenge. He was drafted 3rd overall because his athleticism stood out so much at times. Even in the G League, when he didn't play great, he stood out as like, oh, that's a different kind of athlete. And we were not seeing those moments. And now we've seen moments of not just how fast he is, but how strong he is. He made an N1 from his, as we like this, my mother used to say, his tuchus. He got knocked down, he threw it up and went in. You're like, oh, that's a Russell Westbrook play. And so I've been really happy to see that. And that's the kind of growth you want to see. You want to see those athletic moments. And he's not going to shoot 22% from 3 for the rest of his career because he won't have a career. And he's just not going to, that's not going to happen. So we know he's going to get better at that. So let's see the things that, I go back to your word, what was it? Transcendent, right? That he was going to be a transcendent player. And that's because he's so athletic. So I'm glad Billups had that conversation. I'm glad he shared it with us, even though he didn't have to. And I'm glad that Scoot took it to heart right away. I mean, he's showing how coachable he is when he's reacting that way.
Oh, yeah. He has coachability written all over him. Yep. I'm trying to remember what game it was. If it was Dallas or Golden State, but we talked to him and he talked about, not settling for certain shots. That he's comfortable and confident that he's going to be able to hit the mid-range stuff consistently, but that's not necessarily what he's about. One of his strengths is, like you said, getting to the rack, and he's built like a running back, right? Matter of fact, he's bigger than every starting running back Oregon's had in the last 15 years at least, other than Stewart and Freeman. Let's put it that way. And so when he puts his head down and goes, obviously you can't run people over, right? But when people body you, people do bump bodies when they're trying to stop you from driving. Not very many guards in the league, let alone point guards, are going to want to bump him because you're going to bounce off of him.
Yeah.
And so that physicality and strength coming through, and then the way he can just absorb blows and still have the strength to get up and finish. And he does a really good job with his touch, finishing off the glass. You know what I mean? So he can create when he's in the air and make things happen. So that's what they want to see from him. And once he does that, other things will open up, and he can, like he always likes to talk about, spray passes out to other people when teams start collapsing and taking that away. So, he talked about it, Bill talked about it, and we're seeing it. And it's made his offensive game a lot better. That said, turnovers still too many. And a lot of his production has been coming in the second half of games when they're kind of getting rolled a little bit. So you want to see more higher end production earlier, where he's helping to impact the team before they're down a lot. But that's nitpicking at this point, because again, he's 19. And what is he, like 13 games into his career? Like he's 17 games into his NBA career. I think he's doing just fine. He'll be all right.
And the thing about the shooting is that the shooting opens up the middle for him. I watched how Chris Paul was guarding him. He was just leaving him,
Letting him shoot.
Collapsing. Yeah. And he was backing up. And it's hard to get by Chris Paul if he's standing, close to the foul line.
Man, he can take Chris Paul and just elevate and dunk on Chris Paul, though.
It's not that easy. Chris Paul's been that short his whole career, and he's one of the best guard.
You know what, though? I say that. I've seen Chris Paul in person numerous times. In real life, he ain't small.
Yeah, he's not. And he's always been. He's stocky too for his size.
Right, and I think he's listed as 6'3", right? Because when I walk,
not 6'3",
dude, in his basketball shoes and me in dress shoes, I felt like he was a little taller than me. I'm a legit 6'2". So I'm just saying, on the basketball court he looks small, but what I just said is easier said than done, because that's a big dude in real life. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, I watched. They list him actually only at 6'1".
Do they?
And they're saying,
shoes he's 6'3".
They're saying without shoes 5'11". Yeah. So
really.
Yeah, that's what the internet doesn't lie.
Yeah, it don't lie.
Yeah, I just saying I was spending a lot. I was concentrating on how's Chris Paul guarding him, because no matter how old he is, Chris Paul knows how to guard. So, and he was just backing off, and eventually, if he would make 2 threes in a row, or he's shooting 35%, then you get there. I mean, John Morant is not a great shooter. He's so athletic, right? That's an example of, but he shoots 30%. They don't want to leave him wide open. Right now, every team is willing to give him a wide open 3. Kamara's a good example. I'm going to go back to my guy.
God. Here's our transition. Is this our transition?
Yeah. To my, like, we go
to my,
I'm just saying he shot terribly. And they're leaving him wide open, and he's starting to knock down the wide opens. You know what I mean? He's not making contested threes yet, but he's knocking down the wide opens. So eventually they might step to him, and then he can go around. Now he's never going to be a scorer. I'm just saying, once Scoot can get to a place where they're not just like, oh yeah, we're just going to leave him. Yeah, we're going to back up. If they have to come out, he's going to go by him. And that's why Dame so good at the rim because they had to come out. CJ, so good at the rim and neither one of them, I mean, Dame was more athletic than given credit for, I often used to think, and he got himself so strong. And we know CJ, CJ dunks, it was like a holiday, but he could get to the rim. And that's because they didn't want to let him shoot. So his game's developing. It's not a meteoric rise in 20 games or less, but he's getting better. And like I said, he's coachable. And I love the fact that he wants to win. He is the most excited guy when they're playing well. He is off the bench even if he's not playing, and he is high-fiving and he is chest bumping. And I love that about him. And I love the fact that not only can Billups talk to him, but Billups knows he could tell, the public that he challenged him.
Right.
Not every guy wants that. I mean, there are a lot of guys that get upset, like, hey, why are you doing that? Like, keep that within us. But Chauncey knows that, this guy doesn't care if I go out and tell people that I challenged him because I know he's going to step up. And we know there's a lot of guys in the league that don't want their coach to let their fans and the media know that they challenged them because they feel that's disrespectful. But Scoot, not that kind of guy. Chauncey's not that kind of coach, right? So that I don't think but Chauncey's also a guy that respects players. So if he thought that would be something that Scoot didn't want, he wouldn't do it. And he did it. And I'm glad he did because we got instant results.
As for your boy Kamara, last 6 games, shooting 47%, 40% on threes, and that's including a 2 for 10 and 0 for 4. In the other games, he is 10 of 11. So he did
leaving him wide open.
Nights,
and he's
making
him pay.
He's making him pay, man. Go ahead.
9 rebounds in 22 minutes against the Suns. He only had 5 points, but he had 9 rebounds. He was annoying. He had 3 steals and a block. So, like, he's just – I ignore the plus minus because I don't want to ever – if it doesn't line up with the way I want to think, then I just ignore it and say it's a bad stat. Now, if he was plus 8, I would say the best stat in the world. But, I thought he played great. I thought Walker played phenomenal in a handful of minutes. He barely played, but it felt like he made like 6 plays, and that changed the momentum of that game. So another young guy that you're glad to see play well.
All right, let's look ahead real quick before we sign off here. Next week, Wemby's coming to town for 2. Are you going to go? Craig?
And they stink.
God, they're bad.
They're horrible.
Early in the season, when they won a couple, people were talking about them making the playoffs. Now they're like, 4-22 or something, 5-21. But hey, are you going to make your way? Now, you think it's back-to-back? You think he'll play both? Has he been playing back-to-back?
I think he's been playing every game, but they're at 4-22. I've been watching Twitter highlights of him, not watching any of their games. I mean, I'm shocked at how bad they are. To be honest, like they're horrible, and they're not even competitive. Yeah, he's played in 24 games, so he's only missed 2 games. So, but I don't know why I wouldn't play him in back-to-back. To be honest. I mean, I don't see the value in that. He's averaging 31 minutes a game. So he's leading them in like every category. He leads them in scoring, he leads them in rebounding, he leads them in block shots, he leads them in turnovers. The only stat he doesn't really lead them in is assists because he leads them in steals too. I mean, he's having a phenomenal rookie year. They just stink. So I wouldn't play him in back-to-backs. I don't know what value that is in putting him out there to lose, especially if you win the first one. I would definitely not play him in the second game. But
soft.
It's not soft. silly.
NBA
He's
soft.
silly.
Back,
the league's
back
different
when I was a
but-
kid, my heroes played every day, sometimes twice a day.
Yeah, and a lot of them broke their feet. And didn't play very long, like
it's a small price to pay.
I was watching, Sabonis's, I think it was his birthday, and there was all the Twitter highlights of Sabonis, and I love watching him. Like, I didn't get to see him play like people here in Portland because I was on the East Coast, and they just didn't have a lot of. You couldn't get NBA games from the West Coast that often, it didn't until the playoffs. And I just remember, knowing about when he was at USSR and all that and seeing him play there and just how big he was. I remember thinking how big his head was and just his passing. And you watch those highlights and he can't move at all. Like his feet, they're like soldered on, like the bottom. And he walks like a robot and runs like a robot. But he was so huge and just so gifted. I just wish, I don't know. I'm just lamenting on how much I wish that we could have seen a healthy Sabonis that was behind the Iron Curtain when he was young. You know what I mean?
A lot of people believe they would have beaten the Bulls in the finals if they had a younger Sabonis.
Yeah, I don't doubt it because he was so good without being able to move, at all. Right. And you watch him and when he dunked, he was so tall, he barely had to, but you could stick a piece of loose leaf paper under his feet, he wasn't getting off the ground.
But he was still pretty agile. He was Joker before Joker.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And I saw someone say something like, I'll take, Sabonis every time he's better. I'm like, no. I think that Jokic is what Sabonis was maybe when he was young. And
right.
And Sabonis was a good shooter for his size, obviously, because it was unheard of that a guy that size would shoot, from beyond the foul line. But Jokic is shooting threes and it's perfect. Like he's fantastic.
And he also grew up doing that. He grew up doing that too. Whereas back then he didn't necessarily grow up doing that. But yeah,
Sabonis was
the final. Huh?
If Sabonis grew up in America at that size, they wouldn't have let him do it. Big men were pushed underneath. It wasn't like we had.
Did they have threes in youth and high school in Russia or USSR?
I don't know. They didn't let me behind the curtain. I'm not old.
But that's what I'm saying though. Like a lot of those players back then didn't grow up with the 3-point line, let alone had the opportunity to shoot it. It's like Magic, Jordan, and Bird didn't attempt a three until the NBA.
Right, but 7'3" guys or 7-foot guys in America they didn't get the pass. Wilt did. Wilt led the league in assists one year. So, and I didn't get to see him. I just seen stat books, and his stats are ridiculous. I'm just saying, they weren't letting big men. They weren't doing game plans about big men that could pass that way. And even Shaq, it wasn't like Shaq was doing that. He was just dunking on people, and he shot a three, could have hurt somebody. He couldn't make a foul shot. So I just wonder what he would have been like to have him in the NBA earlier, if that could have been worked out. And it is something to appreciate that the NBA truly is a global league now, and the best players in the world find their way to the NBA. And we get to see them while they're young and don't have to wait for, Sabonis to get permission or defect, and all that.
For correction, Magic and Bird didn't play with the three before the NBA, but Jordan did. Just want to correct myself on that. Jordan came after those guys. All right. Anything else?
No.
To cover?
Happy holidays. Happy holidays.
You too, man. You too.
Thanks.
We made it to the holiday season. We're a third of the way through the season. Still another 50-something games to go. I'm searching for motivation each night. I'm not gonna lie. Not having a standings component to everything really is hard for me because I enjoy the race,
of course,
right? And there's just no race, so that's difficult. on my site.
Right, and when you're writing game stories,
and the results don't
wins and the
necessarily
losses,
matter.
right, are buried. Even in the win, right? You're still looking at
Ayton and Sharp and
right, and what is the storyline of the game? And you can only there's 80 of these.
And there's 10 players in the rotation in 82 games. So you run out of angles. It gets repetitive really quickly. Let's put that that way. And it's just par for the course for a beat like this. Football.
But at least you have a
2
coach,
seasons in.
At least you have a coach that's willing to talk, and you can have conversations with him.
Yeah, he does a good job of trying to, offer some good insight. But even then, sometimes I'll sit there and I'm like, yeah, he said this 8 times. But it's like, what else is there to ask?
Been asked it too.
Yeah, what else is there to ask? But that's just how it is. And at least we do have some young talent to watch and try to dissect as much as we can their development, like Tamani and Sharp and Scoot and Jabari. So at least there's that to cling to. But we'll have a trade deadline. I think they'll make some moves.
Yep.
And then and then
against Golden State to make the playoffs, right? That'll be something.
Yeah, there's that.
Double
there's
beat.
There's that. Yes. I should start doing posts on Golden State with the loss.
Go.
All right.
I will say this. At least it's you're not covering 2010 Portland Trailblazers Caleb Canales as the interim head coach.
Oh, God.
I love Caleb, nicest guy in the world, but he didn't want to talk, any answers. That team wasn't making the playoffs. They had let Nate go.
Yeah.
And every day you go to practice and you're like, so Caleb, what question do you not want to answer today? Because no matter what, he's just like, we're just going to put the best team out there. So at least you have that. And there are storylines even still for Chauncey because his coaching career, we are in year 3, but we haven't had a lot of ability to evaluate him. So I think you'll have some of that.
I think he's done a good job, man. I think he's done a good job.
I do too. Right.
Like,
this year,
this team plays hard. Yeah, this team plays hard. They played solid defense, even when they were injured and undermanned. Like, the other guys step up and play, solid NBA basketball. I can't see how anyone can fault him for anything this year. And it cracks me up when I see people on Twitter, we got to get a new coach. For what? What's the new coach going to do? Why is Chauncey a bad coach because he's not winning with this team, but Popovich is 4-20 whatever, and with Wemby and Keldon Johnson and Sochan, and he hasn't had a winning season in 4 years. But he's one of the greatest coaches ever. What's the problem? Oh, he doesn't have talent. Oh, but Chauncey has talent? Chauncey's had healthy talent the last 3 years? No. So how can you say it's all Chauncey's fault when you're watching Popovich, who's considered one of the greatest ever, struggle for 4 years straight? How's that work?
Well, you said what's the difference, and it's 5 rings, but that's the difference.
Okay, right. So but the guy with 5 rings,
6 rings, I lost count.
But the guy with 5 rings, like I said, hasn't made the playoffs since 19.
Oh,
so was it him or was it Duncan Robinson? Okay, so if Chauncey Billups had Tim Duncan, David Robinson, would he win a title? I think he would. Who was Popovich as a coach before they got Duncan? And he fired Harris, was it, to take over the team because now he had Duncan and Robinson. He was a GM, remember? They lucked him to Duncan. He fired the coach, took over as coach, and started winning championships with Duncan and Robinson. And then got labeled a genius. So my point is, those guys aren't around, he can't win. Because it's about what? The talent. Has Billups had winning talent? No. Therefore, you can't really blame him for losing, I don't think.
Yeah, both things you're saying are true. Obviously, the talent right now and they're listening and doing that. I will say this about Popovich. He and maybe he's past his prime like Belichick, right? But both when I talk about Belichick, I hate the Patriots, and I'm no Spurs fan. But they both had abilities to find players to fit around those stars, and they overperformed. So
I'm not denying. I'm not denying their greatness. I'm saying, as great as Popovich is, he hasn't made the playoffs in 4 years because they haven't had enough talent. Billups hasn't had enough talent So to criticize him for losing when either guys are injured or he hasn't had enough talent, to me, is just silly, because you see what happens to even the greatest coaches ever. When they don't have enough talent, they're not going to win.
And they're not losing by 30 every night.
Right, and they're playing hard. They're playing hard, and they're playing defense, and they're undermanned. And the most talented guys they have that people are excited about, other than Ant and Grant, are either too young or have underachieved their entire career, like Ayton. So again, what you have no evidence to point to say these players should be winning. There's zero evidence that this group of players should be winning, because none of them have ever won as the guy on their team in the NBA ever.
Yep.
So,
and he found a second round draft pick, Kamara, and he's playing great. And you can't, and it's, you know how it is. If a player plays great, it's the talent of the player, and if the player plays crappy, it's because the coach doesn't know how to use him.
Right.
It's the way of, it's just how it's just how it works, you know? Like,
right.
And if a GM drafts a great guy, number 1 overall, that everyone would have drafted number 1 overall, and he stinks, it's his fault. But if you draft Draymond Green in the second round, you got lucky.
Right.
So
exactly.
And we're all guilty of it, including me.
I'm not. I look at those things. I try to be fair. That's one of my things. I'm all about fairness.
I agree. I'm just saying, like, right now, the credit to that Cronin and the Blazers said we want Kamara, and they held for it. Kudos, because they got a player that is contributing, and you could see having a role in the NBA for a long time, which most second rounders don't. So credit for that, and also credit for
they also passed on him and took Chris Murray and Rupert, who were in the G League. So it's a mixed bag, right?
But it's not yet. It's not a mixed bag yet, because you don't know what those two players will be, because you can't have any expectation.
It's not a conclusion. There's no final conclusion yet. But as of right now, they passed on this guy that they coveted later, so they missed twice. And they told us they got 3 lottery talents. Remember that? They had Murray rated in the lottery. They even had Rupert allegedly rated in the lottery. So I'm just saying, mixed bag. I'm just keeping it real. I'm being fair. I'm being fair.
Is it wrong that when Keegan Murray does what he does, I'm like, well, I think Chris has got that's good for the Blazers.
Yeah, they got the same genes.
Same DNA. Like, how
same
can
DNA. Work? Same DNA, born the same day. They look exactly alike. Chris Murray has talent, man. He's going to develop. We'll see.
Yeah.
But Kamara, really, the only difference between them, really, is that Kamara is a little bit more athletic and has a lot more defensive tenacity. Offensively, Murray's ahead. But what Kamara brings defensively, no one. The Blazers haven't had a guy like him since Batum, right?
Yeah, and his body, that's a big difference. Like, you look at the two of them together, and you're like, oh, Kamara, like, his body's in a different place than Murray.
Batum.
I mean, he's
Murray.
Yeah, and Batum. Right.
But early Batum, later Batum, yeah. But, yeah. So, no, and that's why he's starting, because I've been complaining about forever. They need a legit size small forward, and they got one. And if he develops offensively, it's going to be a huge hit. But regardless, it was a good pickup that they demanded to have him in there. So anyway,
absolutely.
All right, we just got another 5 more minutes out of the podcast.
Happy holidays, everybody! Have a great one.
All right, we'll be back after the holidays. After the Christmas break, at least. Not the entire break. We'll be back next week. You're gonna be around next week, right?
I'll be around.
You'll be around. All right, we'll be around next week to talk more Blazer development on the Blazer Focus podcast.